as you can see from your screen here, we are looking at the finviz.com website, and what I wanted you to see, and of course this is a commodities heat map, and what I wanted you to see is the fact that at the current time, and I'll even refresh this, it's slightly delayed, but it's still worth taking a look. At the current time, look at the cross section between the Dow being up, and there's a shot of the Dow. Now what I also want you to notice is the daily chart that's popped up as I've rolled over that particular segment of this heat map. Notice that we're heading up into that triple, quadruple, I don't even know what you want to consider it at this point, but that ceiling, right around 12.2 there, we're heading right up into that ceiling. Pre-market, it's only 3 minutes after 9 a.m. on the East Coast. Dow's looking very strong, S&P's looking very strong, NAS is looking very strong. Okay, along with that, crude oil up almost $1 over 101. Heading towards 102. So crude oil is looking very strong. Crude oil is the market that will often accompany that risk appetite when there's, when the overall equities markets around the world are up. What does that usually indicate? Growth, expansion, and then crude oil, obviously a main component of the mechanics behind the growth and expansion, typically moves with it. I'm very skeptical when I see moves in the equities market that aren't accompanied by crude oil. However, I would be remiss if I did not mention that crude is rising for reasons of its own as well, not just the strong pre-market in U.S. equities, but don't forget that we're getting another significant day of crude oil strength on all those tensions in the Middle East, namely Iran. So that's really what, when you take a look at the strength today, I think the Iran headline is really what is powering this move higher. So that is what we're looking at. Now, here's what's interesting. When you start looking at the strength that, it's hard for me to say take Europe out of the equation, but if you take Europe out of the equation, there's a lot of bullishness out there. Europe is just the anchor that's driving, it's just dragging us into the deep water. But there are a lot of very positive stories running around there. They just all happen to be smothered by the Europe story. Okay, just like the U.S. smothered a lot of positive growth around the world back in 2008. This is really no different. Okay, so as we look at what's going on in terms of the move higher in crude, the stronger Dow, I also want you to take a look at the U.S. dollar, because when crude oil is moving higher, when commodities are moving higher, one of the things that you'll remember is that sometimes it's powered by the weaker dollar. So don't forget, strength in commodities, strength in equities, the weakness in dollar, it all feeds on one another. So I want you to understand that connection. I have to tell you, I'm not overly impressed, though, by the dollar's bearishness. Now, one of the things that we're going to look at when we dive into the commodity charts here in just a minute, and I really want you to think about all these connections. It is really connecting the dots. And on those great trading days, if you were to go back, and I often do, when I see those days where things were just clicking and the follow-through was really there, and I was following the larger trends rather than counter-trend trading, or even when I am counter-trend trading on shorter-term time frames, it's those good follow-through days, those solid sentiment and momentum days come from those correlations. It's the ones we're talking about specifically here: equities, commodities, namely crude, and the dollar moving in that way where they're feeding off one another. Now, I will say again, the dollar overall is in an uptrend. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Crude is also overall in an uptrend. Interesting, right? They shouldn't typically be that way. The Dow and equities are actually in a non-trending environment. So let's go ahead and dive into those charts.